Emily, my company is going down every day. They're stealing everything, and I'm too old and tired to control it. Millions of dollars are missing every day, every month.
An old billionaire sits in his study, tears in his eyes, telling his daughter that thieves are eating his company alive, and he is too old and too tired to stop them. His daughter says nothing that night. But 3 days later, she quits her high-paying job, dyes her hair, puts on a cleaner's uniform, and walks into her own father's company as a nobody, ready to bring down every single person who dared to steal from him. Welcome back to the channel, everyone. If this is your first time here, we tell true-to-life inspired stories about family, betrayal, power, and justice. The kind of stories that remind us that loyalty sometimes shows up in the most unexpected disguise. Today's story is called The Silent Cleaner Who Brought Down an Empire of Thieves. And this version is a little different from anything we've told before, because this time, it all starts with a father's confession to his daughter that he can no longer protect what he built. Stick around till the end, because what this woman does next will absolutely inspire you. And if you enjoy stories like this, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss one. Now, let's get into it. In the heart of Chicago, on the 40th floor of a glass tower that touched the clouds, sat the headquarters of Hale Industries, one of the largest logistics and manufacturing companies in the Midwest. The company had been built from nothing by a man named Richard Hale, a man who started his career driving a delivery truck through the freezing winters of Illinois and ended up owning a fleet of over 3,000 trucks, 12 warehouses, and a name that appeared in business magazines from coast to coast. Richard Hale was 73 years old now. His hair had turned completely silver, his hands trembled slightly when he held his morning coffee, and his heart, quite literally, had begun to fail him. Doctors at Northwestern Memorial Hospital had warned him 3 times that year that his blood pressure was dangerously high, and that stress, not old age, not disease, was going to be the thing that finally took him. His daughter, Emily Hale, was 34 years old, sharp, quiet, and successful in her own right. She had an MBA from the University of Michigan and had spent the last several years building an impressive career as a senior financial strategist at a private investment firm in downtown Chicago, a career she had built entirely on her own merit, refusing to work for her father so that no one could ever say she got there because of his name. She loved her independence. She loved her own office, her own title, her own life. But every Sunday evening, without fail, Emily drove out to her father's estate in Lake Forest for dinner. And lately, those dinners had become harder and harder to sit through. One particular Sunday evening in late September, Emily arrived to find her father sitting alone in his study rather than at the dinner table, staring blankly at a stack of financial reports spread across his desk. The housekeeper told her he hadn't touched his dinner. "Dad," Emily said softly, stepping into the room. "You didn't eat." Richard looked up at her, and what she saw in his eyes frightened her more than anything he could have said. He looked defeated, not tired from work, not stressed from a bad quarter, but truly, deeply defeated, like a man who had finally run out of fight. "Sit down, sweetheart," he said quietly. Emily sat across from him, and for a long moment, Richard said nothing. He simply stared at the reports in front of him, his jaw tight, his hands trembling slightly on the edge of the desk. "I built this company from a single delivery truck," he finally said. 46 years, Emily. 46 years of my life. And I think I'm losing it. And I don't mean my mind, although some days I wonder about that too. I mean the company. I think people I trusted are stealing from me, and I don't have the strength to stop them anymore." Emily felt her chest tighten. "Dad, what are you talking about?" Richard slid one of the reports across the desk toward her. "Profits have been dropping for almost 2 years now. Slowly. At first. So slowly I told myself it was just the economy, just rising fuel costs, just normal fluctuation. But it's not normal anymore. Warehouses are reporting shortages that don't add up. Trucks are being serviced twice as often as they should need. Contracts are being awarded to vendors I've never heard of, vendors that seem to vanish the moment they're paid. I hired 2 auditing firms to look into it, Emily. Both times, the investigations mysteriously stalled. Paperwork went missing. The auditors walked away with vague explanations and signed non-disclosure agreements, like someone paid them to disappear. Have you gone to the board? To the police? With what proof? Richard said, his voice cracking slightly. Every time I try to dig deeper, doors close in my face. My own executives, people I hired myself, people I trusted with my life's work, smile at me in meetings and tell me everything is fine. I sit in board meetings now, and I feel like an old fool nobody respects anymore. They think because my hands shake and my heart is weak, I've lost my mind along with my strength. He rubbed his temples. My doctor told me last month if my blood pressure doesn't come down, I might not see my next birthday. And Emily, I'm scared. Not of dying, I'm scared of watching everything I built be stolen out from under me while I'm too old and too tired to stop it. Emily reached across the desk and took her father's trembling hand in both of hers. Dad, look at me. You are not losing your mind, and you are not going to lose this company. Not while I'm alive. I don't know what to do anymore, Richard said. I've tried everything. Every outsider I send in gets discovered within days. Whoever is doing this is smart. They're watching everything. Emily sat in silence for a long moment, her mind racing. She thought about her father's trembling hands. She thought about her mother, who had passed away 6 years earlier, and how her father had promised at her graveside that he would keep building the company for their family's future. She thought about every Sunday dinner, where he grew a little more tired, a little more defeated. Then we stopped sending in outsiders, Emily finally said. Richard looked up at her, confused. Nobody watches the cleaner, Dad, Emily said. Nobody lowers their voice around the person mopping the floor at midnight. Nobody thinks twice about the woman emptying trash cans while they're on the phone discussing where to hide stolen money. I want to go in myself, not as an executive, not as your daughter, as a cleaner. Richard stared at her, stunned. Emily, you have your own career, your own life. I would never ask you to give that up for this. You're not asking, Emily said. I'm offering. And Dad, I've already made up my mind. 3 days later, Emily walked into her boss's office at the investment firm and resigned from the job she had spent 8 years building. A job she loved, a job that had nothing to do with her father's name or money. Her boss was stunned, tried to offer her a raise, a promotion, anything to keep her, not understanding that this had nothing to do with money at all. Emily simply smiled, thanked him for everything he had taught her, and walked out of that office for the last time without looking back. That same week, she dyed her chestnut hair a dark plain brown, bought a pair of thick-rimmed glasses she didn't actually need, and began using her middle name paired with her late mother's maiden name to become someone entirely new. Sarah Monroe. Nobody at Hale Industries had seen Emily Hale in person in over 6 years. She had built her career quietly, deliberately staying out of the public eye, refusing every interview request that ever mentioned her father, and now that decision was about to become the very thing that saved his company. 3 weeks later, a new employee named Sarah Monroe joined the overnight cleaning crew at Hale Industries. Sarah Monroe wore her dark-dyed hair pulled into a tight, practical bun. She wore oversized navy blue coveralls with the Hale Industries logo stitched onto the chest and steel-toe boots that felt nothing like the tailored blazers and heels she used to wear to her old job downtown. She pushed a squeaky cleaning cart through the same hallways where her father's name hung in gold letters on the lobby wall, and not a single person recognized her. That was the first thing Emily learned in her new disguise. Invisibility was a kind of power nobody ever talked about. On her very first night, she was assigned to the executive floor, the 40th floor, the floor where her father's office sat locked and dark after hours, and where the offices of his top 3 executives, Gary Fenwick, the chief operating officer, Diane Walsh, the chief financial officer, and Robert Kessler, the head of logistics, remained lit far longer than any normal workday required. At around 10:30 that first night, Emily pushed her cart quietly down the hallway when she heard voices coming from behind Gary Fenwick's half-closed office door. "The Denver shipment numbers don't add up," a woman's voice said. That was Diane Walsh. "They'll add up fine once the invoices go through. Meridian Freight Solutions," Gary replied. "Nobody questions vendor markups if the paperwork looks clean." "Richard's getting suspicious again," Diane said. Gary laughed, a low, confident laugh. "Richard is 73 years old, with a bad heart and no fight left in him. He signs whatever we put in front of him. Just keep routing the discrepancies through the maintenance budget. Nobody audits maintenance." Emily's hands froze on the handle of her cleaning cart. Hearing her father's weakness spoken about so casually, so cruelly, by a man he trusted, made her blood boil in a way she hadn't expected. She forced herself to keep moving, wiping down the hallway table just outside their office, memorizing every single word. That night, after her shift ended at 2 in the morning, Emily drove straight to her father's estate, let herself into his study using her old key, and recorded everything she had heard into a small notebook hidden inside her cleaning cart's supply compartment. Meridian Freight Solutions, Richard repeated the next morning, his coffee untouched. I've never heard that name in my life. That's the point, Emily said. It's a shell company. I'd bet everything on it. Over the following weeks, Emily's disguise as Sarah Monroe took her deeper into the underbelly of Hale Industries. She cleaned the security office at night and learned that the head of building security, a man named Marcus Boone, had been quietly disabling certain hallway cameras during specific hours, always coinciding with late-night visits from a man in a gray sedan who came to collect thick manila envelopes from Gary Fenwick's office. She cleaned the break room on the 3rd floor, where warehouse supervisors from 3 different Hale Industries locations gathered for a private card game every other Thursday night, a game where cash changed hands in amounts far larger than any warehouse supervisor's salary should have allowed. She cleaned the accounting department, where the same vendor names kept appearing on invoices left carelessly on desks, invoices for equipment repairs that never happened, invoices for fuel deliveries to trucks sitting untouched in the yard all week, invoices from consulting firms whose addresses, when Emily looked them up, led to empty storefronts and residential apartments in Gary Fenwick's own neighborhood. Piece by piece, name by name, dollar by dollar, Sarah Monroe the cleaner was building a case no auditor and no private investigator had ever managed to build, because she wasn't looking at the numbers from the outside. She was living inside the walls where the crime was happening, and every night she spent scrubbing floors was a night spent honoring the tired, trembling hands of the father who raised her. But undercover work is never simple, and there is always a moment where curiosity turns dangerous. For Emily, that moment came on a rainy Tuesday night in October. She had stayed later than usual on the 40th floor, waiting for Gary Fenwick's office light to finally go dark. When he left for the night, Emily let herself in to empty the trash, and there, on the corner of his desk, sat a folder labeled Q3 Adjustments, Confidential. Every fiber in her body told her to leave it alone, but she thought of her father's trembling hands, and she opened it anyway. Inside were wire transfer records, dozens of them, routing money from Hale Industries operational accounts into offshore accounts, disguised as logistics consulting fees and emergency fleet maintenance. The total for the 3rd quarter alone came to just over $4 million. Emily photographed every page as quickly and quietly as she could, so absorbed in her work that she didn't hear the office door creak open behind her. "You're not supposed to be in here after 10, a deep voice said. Emily nearly dropped her phone. She turned to find Marcus Boone standing in the doorway, his flashlight cutting across the dim office. "I was just finishing the trash," Emily said, keeping her eyes down. "I'll go now." Marcus's flashlight lingered on the open folder on the desk. "Most people who work this floor don't ask questions," he said. "They just do their job and go home." "That's exactly what I'm doing," Emily said. Marcus studied her a long moment, then stepped fully into the room and closed the door behind him. "I've worked here 11 years, he said quietly. "I've disabled cameras I shouldn't have because Gary Fenwick told me my job depended on it, and because he paid me enough to cover my daughter's medical bills 2 years ago. But I've got a conscience, Sarah, or whatever your real name is. No cleaner reads financial documents that carefully." Emily's heart pounded. She had been caught. But instead of panic, a strange calm settled over her. The same calm her father used to describe from the early days of building his business, when every decision felt like it could save or destroy everything. She looked Marcus directly in the eyes. "My name is Emily Hale," she said quietly. "Richard Hale is my father. He's sick, Marcus. He's scared, and he doesn't have the strength left to fight this himself. I quit my own job to come in here and do it for him. I need your help." Marcus said nothing for a long moment. Then he sat down slowly in the chair across from Gary's desk. "Your father built this company from a single delivery truck," he said. "My own father used to work for him back in the 80s. He always said Richard Hale was the one honest man in an industry full of thieves. He shook his head. I never wanted to be part of this. Then help me end it, Emily said. Help me get proof so strong that no lawyer, no loophole, and no bribe can protect any of them. Over the following weeks, Marcus became Emily's secret ally inside Hale Industries. He restored the disabled cameras one at a time and began quietly saving backup footage onto an external hard drive he kept hidden at his own home, safe from company servers that could be wiped. He gave Emily access to storage rooms and service corridors she wouldn't normally clean, where old paperwork and outdated hard drives sat waiting to be discarded. Together, they built a timeline that told the full, ugly story. Gary Fenwick had been diverting company funds through fake vendor contracts for nearly 3 years, funneling money into offshore accounts under his wife's maiden name. Diane Walsh had been altering quarterly reports to hide the discrepancies in exchange for a cut of the stolen funds. Robert Kessler had been approving inflated maintenance and fuel contracts with companies that didn't exist, splitting profits with warehouse supervisors across 3 states. Even Hale Industries' own general counsel, a man named Peter Alcott, had been quietly burying every internal complaint that came close to exposing the scheme, in exchange for a steady stream of untraceable cash. It wasn't one bad employee, it was an entire ecosystem of corruption, built carefully over years, protected by people who assumed an old man with a bad heart would never notice, and even if he did, would never have the strength left to prove it. They had never accounted for his daughter mopping their floors at midnight. By late November, Emily had compiled a case so airtight that even the most expensive defense attorney in Chicago couldn't talk their way out of it. Bank records, wire transfers, shell company registrations, security footage of manila envelopes changing hands in parking garages, recorded conversations, sworn statements from 2 lower-level warehouse workers desperate to cooperate once they realized the scheme was finally being exposed. Richard Hale sat in his study one December evening, staring at the folder his daughter placed in front of him, nearly 2 inches thick, containing weeks of quiet, dangerous, undercover work. "My God, Emily," he whispered, flipping through page after page. "You gave up your entire career for this." "I gave up a job, Dad," Emily said softly. "You gave up your health trying to protect this company alone. This was never a choice for me. It was you or nothing." Richard closed the folder, his hands trembling, not from illness this time, but from something closer to relief. "What happens now?" "Now," Emily said, "you call the FBI's white-collar crime division, you call your board of directors, and Monday morning, when Sarah Monroe the cleaner doesn't show up for her shift, Emily Hale walks into that boardroom instead." And that is exactly what happened. The following Monday morning, Gary Fenwick walked into the 40th floor conference room, expecting a routine quarterly meeting. Instead, he found Richard Hale seated at the head of the table, sitting taller and steadier than he had in months, flanked by 2 federal agents and the company's outside legal counsel, along with a woman he had walked past in the hallway 100 times without ever truly seeing. "Good morning, Gary," Emily said, removing her glasses and letting her natural hair color show for the first time in weeks. "I don't believe we've been properly introduced. My name is Emily Hale. You might remember me as Sarah, the cleaner." The color drained from Gary Fenwick's face so completely that for a moment, Richard genuinely worried the man might collapse on the spot. One by one, they were called in. Diane Walsh, who tried to claim ignorance until she was shown the recorded audio of her own voice discussing the Meridian freight scheme. Robert Kessler, who attempted to blame Gary entirely until bank records proved otherwise. Peter Alcott, the general counsel, who resigned on the spot the moment he realized his years of buried complaints had been recovered. And Marcus Boone, who because of his cooperation was granted full immunity and, at Richard's personal request, was promoted to Director of Corporate Security, a position he holds to this day. In total, the investigation uncovered over $11 million in stolen and misappropriated funds spanning nearly 3 years. Federal charges were filed against Gary Fenwick, Diane Walsh, Robert Kessler, and 6 additional warehouse supervisors across 3 states. Civil suits followed, forcing the return of stolen assets and frozen offshore accounts, including a lake house in Michigan and a boat Gary Fenwick had purchased in cash just 4 months earlier. Richard Hale, for the first time in almost 2 years, slept soundly through the night. His doctor, at his next appointment, noted with quiet astonishment that his blood pressure had finally begun to drop. Hale Industries rebuilt its executive leadership from the ground up, with stricter financial oversight, rotating independent audits, and a direct whistleblower hotline reporting straight to the board. And Emily Hale, the woman who had walked away from her own successful career to disguise herself as an invisible cleaner, was appointed Chief Operating Officer of the very company she had quietly saved from collapse. On her first official day in the role, she walked past the same hallway where Marcus Boone once caught her reading confidential documents, past the same office where she first heard Gary Fenwick's voice mocking her father's weakness, and she smiled, not because of the title on her new office door, but because her father, sitting quietly in the boardroom that morning, looked healthier, steadier, and more at peace than she had seen him in years. Sometimes, the greatest gift a child can give a parent isn't money, and it isn't fame. Sometimes it's simply showing up, in whatever disguise is necessary, to carry a burden they can no longer carry alone. Now, before we wrap up today's story, I want to leave you with something to think about. So many of us watch our parents grow older, watch their hands begin to tremble, watch the fire in their eyes dim just a little more each year, and we tell ourselves, someone else will step in to help, someone else will notice, someone else will fix it. But sometimes, the truth is that we are the ones who have to step in. Emily didn't need a title to protect her father. She didn't need permission. She simply needed courage, patience, and the willingness to lower herself into a role nobody would suspect, all so the people she loved most could finally rest. If there's one thing to take from this story, let it be this: never assume you're too small, too quiet, or too overlooked to make a real difference in someone's life. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is pick up a mop, walk in quietly, and refuse to leave until the truth comes out. If this story moved you, if it kept you glued to your screen wondering what would happen next, do me a huge favor right now. Hit that like button, drop a comment letting me know what part of this story hit you the hardest. And if you haven't already, subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications, because we release brand new stories just like this one every single week. Stories about family, sacrifice, justice, and the quiet strength of people who refuse to give up on the ones they love. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end. We'll see you in the next story.
Please subscribe to my YouTube channel and support me. Thank you so much. I love you all. Bye!